solution. Elevate your knowledge. Certification is the way.
At Specialized Solutions, our success is directly tied to the success our customers have with our training and certification programs.
Increase your earning potential. Earn as you learn.
Specialized Solutions is committed to your success. I'm Carrie Savat, President of Specialized Solutions, and congratulations on accepting the challenge to become certified.
Soar to new heights. Push your knowledge to the extreme. Advance your career. Knowledge is the way. Achieve your goals. Certification is the solution.
Specialized Solutions is your training and certification expert. Hello, and welcome to Internet Information Server 4.0. During this course, we're going to walk you through the planning, the installation, configuration, the monitoring, optimization, and troubleshooting of IIS 4.0.
The objectives that we're going to cover during this course will help prepare you to sit and pass the Microsoft Exam 7087. But before we get started, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Kathy Dellinger.
And I'm Kim During.
And between us, we each have over 8 years of experience in networking and consulting.
Yeah, and with the explosive growth of the internet, intranet, and extranet technologies, IIS is a product that we deal with in our daily lives. Self-contained in the product is just about everything that you need to have a full implementation of an intranet or an internet site.
Well, let's get started.
All right.
One of the first things that you need to consider before installing IIS on your server within your corporation is planning. Planning is the most important part of your IIS installation.
There's several elements of planning that you need to consider. With planning to use IIS 4.0, you really need to look at several elements of what you're going to actually do with your server. What is its purpose? Is it going to be public? Is it going to be private, like in, for example, in an intranet scenario? The first element that you should really look at is your security strategy. Built into IIS is several layers of security that you can apply to the application. But also, the application runs on top of Windows NT Server 4.0, which has many levels of security built into the actual operating system. So you can use a combination of the two security systems to apply to Internet Information Server.
You also want to consider when installing IIS whether or not you want to control anonymous access. Because IIS is a World Wide Web server, or WWW server, this is an important point. Also in that, you want to consider whether or not you want to control users, known users, or known groups. You can control access by host or by the network. The next thing you may want to consider is whether you're going to be using SSL or Secure Sockets Layer to provide encryption and authentication schemes with your Internet Information Server. And finally, you want to identify the appropriate balance between using IIS security and Windows NT NTFS security, or the NT file system security that's inherent within Windows NT.
For example, when you are applying your security and you're in a PDC environment, or your IIS server is a member of a domain that you have on a network that's already existing, then you would administer that server using your PDC or your BDC's global account, user, password, authentication, user rights, etc. If you install your IIS server on a standalone server, then the security rights that you would set would be in the local user's database, and local user rights would apply. So if you're in a situation publicly on the internet, then you would probably be in a better situation or be more secure if that was a standalone server. In an intranet application, it becomes less of an importance and actually a benefit to use it in or have it a member server so that your global administration of the user rights, who has access to what information, is maintained through your domain, which is generally already set up and in place.
Once you've decided upon your security strategy and how you're going to enable or disallow different security aspects in your Internet Information Server, you've picked on whether or not you want to be a member of a domain or a standalone server. The next thing that we want to talk about is how Microsoft Internet Information Server integrates with other Microsoft back office products. It includes Microsoft SQL Server, Exchange Server, Proxy Server, SNA Server, connectivity for IBM Enterprise Networks, SMS Management Server, and Microsoft's Commercial Internet Server. Because IIS is a Microsoft product, it's important to know what other Microsoft products that it integrates in with seamlessly. So you can use IIS to leverage any other applications that you may need to integrate with IIS.
The next thing that we need to look at during our planning phase is what we're going to do about the DNS, what we're going to do about our domain name system or domain name service. Domain name service is actually one of the bases is how the internet runs. What happens is when you go to, if you've surfed the internet before, you go to your browser and you type in an address, www.microsoft.com. Well, how your computer knows how to get from point A to point B and actually attach to the Microsoft servers so that you can look at their web page is DNS. If you're planning on using your Internet Information Server for a public server, then you need to make some critical decisions on what you're going to do about DNS or about a domain name. There's several different parties involved in the registration of the domain name. There's several different steps that you have to take. Microsoft's Windows NT Server actually comes with a DNS server. So you can perform the function of your own DNS on your IIS NT Server box. However, it's really more common for you to use an internet service provider to do this function for you. So your internet service provider is generally the person or entity that would supply your internet connection. And these can be telephone companies or large ISP companies, and they generally can do the DNS function for you if you don't want to have that in place in-house.
If you're going to open up your internet server or internet server to the internet, then you'll have to have a fully qualified domain name. However, if you're going to keep your Internet Information Server closed off from the rest of the world, you can make up any name that you want. However, if you choose to open it up, you'll need to go register your domain name with INTERNIC, which is a self-appointing governing body that doles out or assigns unique domain names to the United States. Some of the common suffixes to a domain name, once you figure out whether or not yours is available, there's 6 of them. There's the .com, .net, .org, .mil, .gov, and .edu.
After you've registered your fully qualified domain name with the appropriate extension that applies to your organization, then you can actually put any type of prefix that you would like to before the domain name. So a normal domain name, or something that you would see for World Wide Web Services, like a web page, could be www. Your qualified domain name, which would be, let's say, for example, Microsoft, and then the .com. That is your domain name. That name also can be used in several different applications by changing the prefix. If you'd like to have an FTP server or file transfer server, then you could put ftp.microsoft.com. If you're going to use that name or that domain name as a mail host for SMTP mail, then or internet-based mail, you could have mail.microsoft.com. So the important part of qualified, which is a part of a domain, it has to be globally unique and be registered in with organization.
Now we've determined whether or not we want to have a qualified domain name. That security features within IIS, what we want to implement are. We've also determined whether or not we have our information server part of the domain. Before we install IIS on our machine, let's take some added features of IIS. Some added features include persistent conditions. Persistent conditions belong to your site. Also, the ability of pipe filing allows us to send a request to the web server before we see a response to the initial request that was sent. There's the ability of longer caches. Do the server cache and make it available longer, and so that when a client connection goes to the server, it can just go from cache instead of pointer to the web page. This can increase performance. Also on the server side, you can have your cache settings determined to each website how long you can cache until. This also increases your performance on your IIS server. One of the neatest features is the HTTP redirect. The redirect simply allows you with one click of a button to redirect your domain to another site, another page, or even your server. It also allows host headers, and host headers allow multiple host names to be associated with a single IP address, so that individual IP addresses are not required for every server to support. This is an important addition to IIS 4.0. Now that we're a bit more familiar with some of the added features that are included with IIS 4.0 that weren't previously included in IIS 3.0, let's discuss how we're going to install IIS.
You have some operating system options to be made well before that you do your installation. Windows NT is optimized and is a full-scale implementation installed on Windows NT Server 4.0. However, you can install IIS on Windows 95, Windows NT Workstation, or even Windows 98 now. The version that you install on those operating systems, other than the Server 4.0, is actually a scaled-down version. However, it gives you all of the functionality necessary to test and build applications for your IIS. So if you're a mobile user or an application developer and you're writing a website, then, and you had a laptop with Windows 95 on it, you could actually test your application development in the environment without actually putting it on a production server or a Windows NT 4.0 server.
Now that you know what kind of operating system that you want to install your IIS on, next we'll talk about some of the services that are included with IIS. Included with IIS is www service, which stands for World Wide Web. This is what helps publish your web pages to the internet, or to your intranet if it's in a closed environment. Also included within IIS is your FTP service. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, and it's the most simplest form of getting and retrieving information from a live server or from a closed server in an internal environment. Also included within IIS is Microsoft Transaction Server. It's a scaled-down version of Transaction Server, and if you're going to utilize this version of it, you may want to consider installing it on a separate machine so that you don't bog down resources on your primary internet machine. You also have an SMTP service. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transport Protocol. It's a mail service that's included with IIS in order for you to send and receive mail. You can also have the ability to set up a news server by using the NTP service, the Network News Transport Protocol. And this enables you on the internet to download and receive information from the public news groups and post to them, or with IIS you can configure an internal news service, and that allows people within your organization to post and have discussion groups online that aren't available to other people on the internet. There's Index Server, which allows you to categorize or catalog your web pages, your website, or even directories on your server. Then there's Microsoft Certificate Server, which enables you, it's integrated within IIS and allows you to issue certificates, which can be used to enhance security with your Internet Information Server.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to installing. We've looked at all of the different planning elements that we need to look at. Again, to summarize, we looked at the security. We looked at our DNS decision, which is an important one. We looked at all of the goodies that are new enhancements from IIS 4.0 and 3.0. And we also looked at the other products included with Internet Information Server. There's a whole host of services that you can supply over and above just wide web services. Now, what do we need in place and working and functioning before we actually go to do an installation? You need to have a very good working and understanding knowledge of TCP/IP. TCP/IP is the protocol that is used by IIS and is used on the Internet as a whole. You also need to understand subnetting. When you get into troubleshooting your applications and your server itself, a lot of the errors or the misconfigurations are due to TCP/IP. Also, you need to have Windows NT Server installed and functioning properly with all of your services starting. Error-free installation. You also need to have Service Pack 3 or higher, the Microsoft Post Service Pack 3 hotfixes as well, installed on your server. These hotfixes and service packs actually do many things. They replace files and they update files necessary for security and other elements that are left out prior to your IIS installation. You also need to have an upgraded browser installed on your server, for example, IE 4.0 or greater. When you do installation of IIS, the browser is the interface that you actually install the product. It will use these files, so anything less than version 4.0 will not get you through the installation process.
Well, I think that about covers planning. Let's go ahead and install IIS.
We talked a little bit about the software requirements, needing the service packs, etc. But with the hardware requirements, you really need to pay attention to those as well. Microsoft has outlined the minimum hardware requirements for an Intel-based operating system are that the CPU needs to be at least 90 MHz and at least a 486 processor. Now, keep in mind, these are minimum requirements. These are not optimal requirements. For example, it depends on the capacity that you want your server to handle is really how you choose your hardware. It also requires that you have a minimum of 50 megabytes of hard disk space at a minimum. Again, Windows NT is optimized by having larger swap files, and this requires more hard disk space. So 50 is the minimum. With memory, they require that you have 32 megabytes of memory. That's just to run the program. If you want to use the program, I would suggest that you put a lot more memory in that. For example, a couple of our production servers have 256 megabytes of memory, and many of, like for example, the servers that host Microsoft's each have about 512 in them. The monitor needs to be a Super VGA with the capabilities of 800 by 600. And the reason that this is true is because of the active desktop type of installation configurations in the management console is more browser-based console and or browser-based application, and it requires that you have the capability of displaying these options at 800 by 600. For an alpha system, you need to have a CPU that's at least 150 megahertz. You need to have a hard disk space that's at least 120 megabytes, at least 48 megabytes of RAM, and also a Super VGA monitor as well on any type of alpha system. Now let's take a look at our computer and go through the installation. My computer here is a Windows NT Server 4.0. It has the Service Pack already installed, and it also has the Microsoft Internet Explorer 4.01 installed as well. To start the installation, you would click on the Start menu, and I'm going to go ahead and just go to the Run command. I have my NTO option pack on the hard drive of my computer. It's already passed out to the source, which is in 4.0 option pack includes many components as well as IIS 4.0 application. Actually, Windows NT option pack is bundled with Microsoft products, including the back office version as well. Windows NT Server 4.0 CD-ROM, the earliest versions include Microsoft IIS 2.0 version, 3.0 can be downloaded, and 4.0 is the pack that can be downloaded. Okay, when it's on the source files, set up full disk. Dialog screen for the Windows NT 4.0 option pack. All the features that are included. Next, this is Microsoft standard license agreement. Once you read this, accept, decline. First, you decline, you can't go forward. Installation is three choices. I can install the minimum, which is going to give me the bare minimum of functions included in the option pack. Typical, which is a little bit more, the options have bells and whistles. But I'm going to choose custom because custom allows me to pick and choose exactly what functions that I want to install. Clicking on custom gives me the following dialog box with all of the for installation. When you see a box that's checked and grayed out, what this means is that it has some components. So within the information server, I have available subcomponents that I also can install. Before you click on that, you click on a button down here to show subcomponents. That's going to show you all of the subcomponents available for IIS. It's a good idea to install documentation to install. The second side is for time. It gives you the ability to really test your server and make sure that the HTML is working correctly and all the protocols are working correctly. You go ahead and install the sample sites. That's what I'll do. Once you've looked at your components and chose them, you can click OK. We have a certificate server. This is the server that allows you to use digital certificates for secure or encrypted data exchange. Certificate servers allows you to use certificates that are qualified on the internet, like for example, VeriSign, and allows you to use the SSL security that we've talked about before, which stands for side layers. When I install this component at this time, page indicates services and allows your server to be ready for front-page users. Front page is an application used by Microsoft that allows you very easily and quickly to generate your own HTML on your own websites and push a couple of buttons and post it to your server. The IIS server has to have this front-page extension installed in order for it to communicate. We also have a component here which allows you to use the RAS components, which is remote access service, components for internet services. There's internet information server, and I'll show you some components of that. Index server, data access components are your ODBC drivers and things like that. The Microsoft Management Console is the application that allows you to configure and administrate the server after you install it. We're going to go over that in detail. Click on Next. You've chosen the component that you'd like. On this dialog box, you're going to come up with root directories Microsoft would like to install. Changes you have to choose the default for allow it to just install the default. Right here, it's telling me that all of my www or my type of services want to be installed in the www root directory. FTP, FTP application is going to go in the program files. Click next. It's asking where I want to install my Microsoft transaction server. The window is asking us, how do you want the administration of this application to work? Do you want it to work locally or do you want to do it remotely? We're going to choose local. Again, it's looking for index server directory. Index server takes the data structure of your hard drive and so that you can easily search it. It works very similar to what a search engine does, where it will bring up files and documents based on the keywords that you put in. This is the mail root directory for our SMTP service that is also included in IIS, and these are my messages. Now go through the overall progress of the installation. All the necessary costs needed to run this application on our hard drive. It can take a while for the installation of IIS because many files and many components, and depending on how fast your hard drive computer is, if a larger hard drive is, etc., it can take a while to have the files installed. Remember, it is very never cancel installation in the middle of it with respect to installing the pack or IIS. Go ahead, if there's errors during installation, pay attention to them and click through all of the errors we get to the end. And go and start the installation again and remove all the components and then have to back again. Each time you reboot your computer, you do these steps. It's very nasty if you install the installation in the middle of corrupt files, missing files, and all types of errors. My computer has written to the hard drive and written to the registry of Windows and T. The next step is to click Finish. This lets it set up. And we will need to reboot our computer. Now our computer is rebooted. Let's take a look at how we're going to configure the different applications that contain IIS. In order to do that, we go down to the Start menu. Click on the Start menu, go to Program, and down to the Windows and T for pack, up to Microsoft Internet Information Server, and down to Internet Service Manager. This is Microsoft Management Console. This is a new type of environment Microsoft has integrated tightly into the operating system. Also, like this example, you can configure every single type of product. It's kind of an all-inclusive configuration tool so that you don't have to go into separate areas and do configuration. Microsoft Management Console here has listed now the information server, Microsoft Transaction Server. These are technically all snap-ins to Microsoft Management Console. In order to configure the Internet Information Server, you need to expand the option by clicking on Internet Information Server. To the right, you have the Test Server 2 or Net Virus computer that I'm configuring. To look for more information here, this configuration is being done local. I'm actually logged into this computer as the administrator. of how you're looking at it. You're looking at this window. It starts with the console here, and then over here is the application where you can change the company to list just the name, not the status, and what type of connection it is. You can change it to large, kind of like I'm going to lean on details so you can see all the things I'm doing here. You want to highlight the computer or the resource when you log in the computer. You right-click on it. Then the properties tab gives us master properties for the various services. So let's take a look at the www service and the master properties associated with the service. Master properties. The difference between the master property